Welcome to episode 16 of Military Veterans Podcast, where we talk to veterans to learn about their stories and experiences. And today we're joined by Darren Carew. Hey, Darren.
Hey.
I said that very deeply.
Well done, buddy.
He's saying well done for your surname, right?
Correct. It's a bit difficult.
It is difficult because all these years I thought your surname was Carew. I think something like that. No, something even different. What did people used to say in the military?
Carew.
Yeah.
Everything. Yeah, I've been mistaken for a Gurkha or a Fijian in the past by looking at a piece of paper. But it's West Walian. I mean, come on.
So yeah, I worked hard and we got it with caring for kangaroos. That's helped me. That's going to help others now. So Carew. There you go.
Nailed
I can't get it wrong now.
Nailed it.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. And just for others listening, you were known as Daz in the military, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, for the 17 and a half years I was in the military, I was known as Daz. I've sort of reverted back to type now, back to the name my mum gave me.
Yeah, as I think most of us do as we grow up or become a civilian again.
We never really grow up though, do we?
We don't. But like I say, thanks so much for inviting me to your home and coming on the show. So we're going to do the 4 questions now before we dive into the main meat of the show. And I'll give you those questions one at a time, even though we touched on one of them just now with what you said, but that's fine. So the first question is, when did you join the military?
I joined the army in 1997.
1997,
yeah,
awesome.
Long time ago.
And the second question is, what service and branch? So you mentioned army, and what branch was it?
Yeah, so I was originally in the infantry, so I was in what would be now the 2nd Battalion, the Royal Welsh, and then I transferred to the Queen's Dragoon Guards after that.
Awesome. Okay, it'd be good to hear what that looked like and felt like. And the next part was, how long did you serve for? And I think, was it 17 and a half?
Yeah, 17 and a half.
Awesome. And lastly, what rank did you get to?
I reached the rank of sergeant.
Awesome. Same as mine. So we've got a bit of a commonality. Is that a word?
Yes.
Yeah. Good. So let's dive right back to the beginning. Where was you born and where did you grow up?
Well, I'm originally from Cardiff. I'm quite lucky. I live up in the Brecon Beacons now, so a little bit away from the smoke of the city. Just a small little place on the edge of Cardiff. I'm from a military family, so it's always sort of been in my blood. So I was really quite keen on, as soon as I sort of left school, getting into training and joining the army. Okay,
so as a kid, did you travel with the family, or did the family stay in Wales?
To be honest, predominantly in Wales. The only time I ever really travelled was on sort of rugby tours. I did go to my uncle's pass-out parade in I think that was 1987. So I quite clearly remember that, and I was just infatuated, with the whole thing. Seeing the soldiers there in their uniforms and going to his accommodation afterwards as he was packing up to come home before going to the battalion. I just sort of, it was one of those sort of situations where you just want that freedom. You understand it, the travel and all that, and I sort of never really looked back.
Okay, and what was childhood like for you? Was it because you knew you had that idea of military, you just played soldiers? Did you do cadets? I don't know. What was that like?
Yeah. I was in the army cadets. There's a couple of guys actually that I served with in the infantry that we were in army cadets together and stuff like that. Everyone used to sort of joke about it. I did join the territorial army when I was in college as well.
Oh wow! Okay.
For a short period of time. That's why I've got an odd army number. I'm a 249.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas most people were 250s.
Yeah.
So I'd always get a little bit of stick about that. But yeah, it was always sort of there for me. I never really wanted to be anything other than a soldier. From really young, and everything sort of built up towards that for me.
Nice. Talking of army cadets, do you remember how long you were in for? Can you remember that?
Oh, no idea.
No. Did you do any ranks or anything like that?
I think I was a corporal or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was a long time ago.
I know. I'm only asking that because I'm reminiscing over my cadet, and I also got to corporal. So another thing we've got in common. And did you say you'd done a bit of rugby whilst at school and maybe college?
Yeah. So rugby was a big part of my life. Started playing at quite a young age, and got really, really into it. My best friend played outside centre and I played inside centre, you know, and we're still best friends now. Yeah, you know, even since we were kids, you know, he's godfather to my children.
Okay.
You know, best man at my wedding. So there's it's really interesting because the like sort of the rugby community and the military community are very similar. We're quite close. We're very loyal to each other, and you know that's why. And I'm sure we'll get onto it later. I've sort of found a little bit of a comfort zone.
Nice.
In my later life.
Nice. Okay. And so, what does the step into becoming, well, I guess a soldier? Because you mentioned you went to college. So, did you plan to do college for a little bit, and then you knew you were going to join the military after, or was you even thinking of getting to university? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, like for me, it was. You know, you sort of you look back on it, and like, you know, I think about what my mum wanted me to do. She was like, "No, I want you to go to college and university and stuff like that." And then what I really wanted to do, which was to just get those boots on and, you know, and join up. So like I'd gone to college, and I think I was in like my second year, and I was with one of my friends, and we decided to just zip into Cardiff for a day, and we just joined up.
Did you?
Went on the beer afterwards. I got home, got a good telling off. I just joined the army. My mum was, oh no, already. And, you know, but like I said, it was what I wanted to do. And, you know, when you're young, you're impatient and you kind of want to get going with things. And, you know, I'm sort of, you talk about, you know, sort of what it takes. I mean, like I was there when my uncle was training to join the army. So I used to go out on my BMX, and he'd be there out running, you know, doing hill sprints and stuff. And then, you know, like further down the line, then I knew all those routes that he used to do, and I started doing them myself. And, you know, my daughter wants to join the army now. And, you know, I've sort of explained to her it's got to come from within, and you've got to learn to do it yourself. And I can remember, you know, I was rugby fit, but, you know, I couldn't run to the top of the hill and back. So I thought, well, that's my goal. I'll start by running to the top of the hill. And before I knew it, I was running to like the church in the next village. And then I was down into the country lanes and run into the next hills and so on and so forth. And, you know, over a series of months, I developed my fitness to a level where I felt quite comfortable. And when I turned up at basic training, the first thing that the sergeant said to me was, "Oh, you're quite a big guy." We had a guy fail his fitness test the other day, and I was that amped up about it. I thought, "Oh God, I've done all this work now," that I just aced my mile and a half. Yeah, it's probably the fastest I've ever run it, to be honest. And he was like, "Oh, okay, then we don't have to worry about that."
Was that the test week type thing where you tip up to see?
No. This was like first day in phase one.
Oh, it's actually going to phase one. Yeah. Okay. Where did you do that?
I went to ATR Bassingbourn, which is a bit unusual. Yeah, so like I was, because I was going to the then Royal Regiment of Wales, I went and done training with the Queen's Div, so I was in training with like the Royal Anglians and all of those sorts of guys. So there was only one or two of us Welsh guys there. The rest of them were predominantly English. That was quite fun.
Right. And so you sound like you smashed the first week of training in regards to, I guess, hitting the ground running, as they say.
Yeah.
And then what was the rest of training like for you? Did it turn out to be what you expected, or was there some moments that stand out in your memory?
Yeah, I mean, like for me, it was very much old school. So I've been able to rely on my uncle for a lot of, you know, keep quiet, pay attention, you know, do the best you can in everything. And I sort of took it and ran with that. And, you know, like phase one for me was really interesting. You know, it's the whole learning about being a soldier, the basics, you know, like everything from basic field craft to, you know, learning about your weapon systems, how to iron your uniform, how to march. But I had a little bit of grounding in that anyway from like the TAs and cadets and stuff like that. So I had a little bit of knowledge, but you never mention anything like that because you just get laughed at.
Yeah.
You know, but I just got my head into it and stayed focused. I mean, like I finished phase one as best recruit, which I was really pleased about, you know, because I got a sausage sandwich on the final exercise. I do distinctly remember that.
That's brilliant. Yeah. Do you remember doing the pass-off parade and getting that award? Do you remember that?
Yeah. I've still got the tankard in my office now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good day. You know, my parents, my mum was there, and, you know, some of my family were there as well. You know, so that was pretty good. It was all downhill from there on in when I got to Catterick, though, when I found my way back to beer.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. So you completed training, got your sausage sandwich. And then what does it look like after that? Do you go off and do other training, or is it straight to the unit?
No, so like because I'd gone to the infantry, like phase 1 training is that generic training that everyone has to do, but then like phase 2 training then is more specialist. So my phase 2 training was in Catterick, so I was at the infantry training centre in Catterick, and again it was another layer on top. And then some people go to phase 3 training as well, but I sort of smashed through Catterick. A lot of it was around like combat fitness and, again, like low level tactics, how you do section attacks and all of that sort of stuff. And then, to be honest, when you move to your unit, it's still like a rude awakening. I don't think they've ever been able to get the levels correct where you when you turn up when you finish training, you're at the correct required standard for your unit. So that's fitness levels, drinking levels back then, and everything else. So I thought I was good to go, and then my first day at the battalion was an eye opener.
Yeah. Before we move on to that, because I want to hear what it sounds like when you first arrive. But that phase 2 at Catterick, is there a story or an experience that stands out from memory there?
Yeah, I mean, I always think back to when we done bayonet fighting.
Oh yeah.
So it's amazing. Like when I've sort of reflected on it, in years past, or even when I've taught it myself as an instructor later in my military career, I just think it's an unreal process. You're up, first thing in the morning, and you're there, and it's like every time your left foot strikes the ground when you're marching, you've got to shout kill. So It's really aggressive, and you've got instructors screaming and shouting at you, and then you're out and you're crawling around, and they wind you up to a point where you just want to explode, and you go through that process. And then there's like there's like an assault course with the bayonet fighting as part of it. I can't remember the proper name for it now. But like everyone, like when you're in phase 1, they show you the sort of pictures of it, and it's uphill. So you look at it and you think, oh, I don't know if I can do that. Well, because you've been wound up since the moment you woke up, it's over before you know it.
Yeah.
It's just done because you're just so aggressive. And it's the first time I've ever seen like training unlock something in me that I couldn't access myself at that point. Just that brutality and that force of will to just go and just be really motivated towards something so very singular. And I can remember then getting back to the accommodation and lining up, and they got the fire hose out and they were hosing all the mud off us and everything else, and just feeling absolutely exhausted. It was probably the most exhausted I've ever felt up to that point in my life.
Yeah.
Just because it just strains you mentally, physically. It was a cool experience though, you know, pretty amazing.
How long are your exercises when you're at Catterick? Because is that a 3-month period as a whole, or
I'll be honest.
Can't remember.
Yeah, I can't really remember. The exercises were never really too long. Things that sort of stand out to me really when I look back at things like defence exes and stuff. But like we actually came up to Brecon,
okay,
and for our final exercise, and I can distinctly remember like the first couple of days. It was just glorious weather, and I just thought to myself, this isn't Brecon, this isn't like this. And I can remember being in the harbour area, making a hot chocolate, ponchos all set up, admin is gleaming, and just thinking, oh, this is the life, this is going to be a gift. And then it Breconed, and it rained and rained and rained and rained to the point where every single bit of kit you've ever possessed was soaking wet, even the stuff you didn't take on exercise. Yeah. So you saw people then proper falling on their swords. When admin, everyone says it in the military, it's a big thing. Yeah. And the more buttoned up you are, that's a lesson I carried right the way through my army career. Make sure you are squared away.
Yeah. Now, I think you're probably one of the most able people to explain what Brecon is. And the reason I'm asking that is because, amazingly, this podcast is listened to in over 37 countries. Can you believe it?
Wow.
So for people that are listening now, what is Brecon? Anyone in the British Army knows what it is, but could you explain it?
Well, like you've got the Brecon Beacons National Park. Within the national park, you've got Sennybridge training area. which is a massive training area where everyone refers to as one of the most miserable places ever. That when you drive over the cattle grid, it instantly starts raining. But, the Special Forces are known to train up here during their hills phase. But you've also got the Infantry Battle School, which is located just on the outskirts of Brecon town itself. So we're far enough away currently to not feel like we're in Mordor, but the further up in towards Sennybridge you travel, the more you feel like you're Frodo taking the ring to Mount Doom.
That's a good way of putting it. And that's in Wales, isn't it? So yeah. Driving out here, it's been quite cool. I felt like I've gone on holiday for the first time, somewhere different other than England. But no, great explanation. Thanks for sharing that. And so you complete training. You moved to your first unit, and where's that located?
The Royal Regiment of Wales had just moved out to Germany, so I got my first taste of living abroad in Paderborn.
Oh, really?
Germany,
so you went out there?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
nice.
That was interesting. I can remember having to. I think I flew from London. I can remember having to cart my whole life's worth of kit, all my military kit, plus all my belongings, across. First time I've ever been on a tube train as well, and travelling across to then get to the airport to then fly out. And it was quite a good time to sort of join, because the battalion had just started training for Northern Ireland, which was up Banner, which was in 1998. So I was quite lucky to fall into that training, leading straight onto an operational tour.
Oh, right. Nice. So you get out there. Is it in 98 you actually get out there? Because training's about a year, isn't it? So
Yeah. So I think, I can't remember off the top of my head. I completed training, and I think we went on tour. I think I turned up just before Christmas, 97.
97, okay.
Yeah, and then we went away in 98 as ops company.
Nice.
Something like that. I can't remember the dates exactly.
Because I was stationed out in Paderborn as well, my second time in Germany. Which camp was you in? Can you remember that?
I was in Barker Barracks originally.
You're in Barker? That's where I was.
Oh, mate, look at that.
That's where I was.
Yeah.
Nice. And so you're getting prepared, you're getting ready to go to Northern Ireland. Is that what you expected when you joined? Is that what your uncle maybe pre-warned you?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, the training, getting used to the environment as well, as a young soldier, even though I had my uncle was in the same battalion as me, it still took a long time, to adjust. You've got to be quiet, keep yourself to yourself. I was speaking to, two of my cousins, my uncle's sons, they actually serve in my regiment now.
Okay.
And that they've been given the same warnings that, my uncle had given to me, I given to them. And, one of my close friends, his sons just joined up as well. And, it was like, keep yourself to yourself and stuff. And some things never change. I'd like to think it's got a little bit easier now, but, finding your feet in a new environment is always quite challenging, regardless of what your age is. But when you're
Absolutely.
like 18 years old, it was so quite, but like I said, because we're building up towards an operational tour, you get into the training, you get to know people, and before you know it, you're out, and then it's all your focus then is on the job. Yeah.
And so how was that? How was your first tour? Bearing in mind, you've just completed training, so in some ways you're kind of like ready for it. But what's the trip out there like, and what's the tour like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was, for me, it's still a real standout moment in my life, because I'd been out to Ireland before on rugby tour.
Oh, really?
So I'd never been to Northern Ireland, but I'd been to Southern Ireland, and, I just out on rugby tour, and you just kind of think, well, it's just across the water. When you're actually in that environment and you see that level of hatred for the first time, it's quite mind-blowing, because, and again, I've reflected on this, further down the line, where I thought to myself, well, if you're in Iraq or Afghanistan, it's so detached from our sort of environment back home in the UK that you can almost accept it. But I always found it very difficult to accept the environment in Northern Ireland, where you could never adjust to, getting spat at by people. And, I can remember being in a riot with a 6-foot shield, and watching the Orange men marching up, you know, and protesting and turning around, and the crowds would build. And the one thing that sort of stood out to me is that you'd have fathers there with their young sons, teaching them, showing them about it. And you see the crowds build, and then the bricks start getting thrown, and then the petrol bombs, and then the blast bombs and everything. And, you know, that sort of generational passed on hatred, you know, I'd never experienced that before, you know. So my you know, like sort of overlying themes of Northern Ireland are of hardship. You know, just it was really hard work, you know, to adapt to that level of soldiering. You know, it's probably the longest I've ever been away from my family. You know, you're talking long days. We were ops company, so, you know, you'd be out on a helicopter, or you'd be in the back of a vehicle, or you'd be getting dropped off somewhere, and then you'd be out in, you know, in the fields, you know, patrolling for hours. So, you know, but it was brilliant for me.
Yeah,
because it really set the tone for the rest of my career. I sort of understood what it took to be a successful soldier, an effective soldier, but also to look up to the commanders and see, you know, what they're understanding. They have to have that situational awareness, understanding where they are, you know, so really good navigational skills, good comms, you know, having good control over your team, but also understanding your team and knowing when, you know, someone's struggling, you know, or, you know, just monitoring everything. And I thought to myself at that stage, I don't know how I'm ever going to be able to do that, because you know, you'd look at a multiple commander and you think there's so many things going on. How is he managing it? But it's a progression, you know. So I'd set that basis. I'd learned what it's like to carry really heavy kit in all types of conditions for long periods of time, being 100% focused all the time. You can't let your guard down because of the threat, you know, and experience that patrol sort of stuff. But also then, you know, being, you know, ops company, being dropped into Drumcree in the back of a helicopter, in the back of a Chinook, and then having to deploy out into a baseline and seeing that, you know, that level of aggression, and having people hanging off your shields when you're 18 years old, and you think, I don't know, you know what I mean? It is a make or break, you know. But off the back of that tour, then you've sort of forged a bond. So I've gone from being the new guy who's just turned up, you know, to having some currency, you know, some money in the bank by, you know, just being good at, you know, what I was told to do, and listening and having the right attitude. So, you know, I sort of understood that, and then I knew what standards to expect from others as I become a commander further down the line.
Yeah. So I was going to ask, how old were you when you were out there? And you said, so you're 18, 19?
18, 19, yeah.
Yeah. So you're still a teenager technically, right? And you're having to, you know, control those people that are so angry towards. Was it towards the British, or was it towards soldiers? Did you pick up on that?
You just don't know.
Just don't
know
know
what I mean? Like, and at that sort of young age as well, like you're so solely focused on just not making a mistake,
on the
just
job,
not letting people down. You know, and like you see the people, but it was really interesting as well to learn about like what it is to be professional, and to have a level of restraint that most people would never associate. You know, unless you've been in the military or you've worked around the military, you don't really know what it takes to, you know, to stand there with a 6-foot shield, with a rifle slung on your back and a baton in your hand, and have somebody screaming and shouting at you and hanging off your shield and spitting at you, and to just not even respond in any way. You know, it's, you know, and then that's a standard that's expected. Yeah. You know, so I took a huge amount from that first tour.
That's good. No doubt grew up quick from that, right?
Oh, yeah.
And how long was that tour? Was that a 6 months?
6 months,
That was 6 months, okay. And then you make your way back with the unit to Paderborn?
Yeah.
And then what does it look like? Do you get some leave, some downtime, or is it training again?
It was, so I think I'm trying, you know, my dates are a little bit iffy in my head, but if I remember right, I'm pretty sure we got back just before Christmas. So we had this crazy period of before we went on leave, and I can just remember everyone, like the drinking culture in the military, I know it's changed now, but it used to be pretty strong. But I can just remember some crazy sessions when we got back, because it was like, right, now we can unwind. Yeah. You know, and it was before you had your whole like decompression sort of stuff. Yeah. So it was like a more natural way to decompress before they release you back to your sort of families. And it was just a great time. It was you know, really good to, like I said, to have built that bit of currency and my standing, to feel like I'm part of a team, and you know, and once you're accepted and you're in, that everything then just becomes a bit easier, you know, and then to go home, you know, with an operational tour under your belt already, you know, you feel great about it.
Feel good.
Yeah.
And talking of currency, I think back then it was still Deutschmarks, wasn't it? So
oh yeah,
you had cheap
amazing.
beer and
oh, it was the best. Absolutely the best. The worst thing that ever happened in like, all the years I was based in Germany was when the euro came in. I can still remember sitting there with like piles of coins which I collected because nobody could work out any of the money when we first moved out there, and you'd empty your drawer and you'd go out and you get a full night out from like pockets full of coins.
That's right. Yeah, because I first went out to Hamel in 2001. So I think it's 2002 it switched to euros. But yeah, you're right. It was hard work getting used to the change of currency. So after that, you have some downtime, and do you get prepared for somewhere else? Are you heading off somewhere else?
Yeah, I mean, I always think like my sort of generation of soldier was really quite lucky in some respects, in the fact that, you know, the guys before us they had Northern Ireland, and then the guys before them probably had the Falklands and Northern Ireland, you know, and the guys these days, I mean, like, you know, they've got like Mali, you know, and maybe some mentoring stuff that they go out and do, but there's not really much. Whereas I caught the tail end of the old school stuff, so I caught Northern Ireland before that all sort of wrapped up, you know, Balkans conflict into Iraq and then Afghanistan as well. So we were just so busy.
Quite busy, weren't we?
Yeah, really, really busy. But in a good way. That's what you want. That's what you want as a soldier.
Yeah. So, so where was next? Did you deploy? So that would have been 98. So yeah, did you deploy in 99 or was it a bit later?
No, like so my platoon got attached to the Royal Green Jackets.
All right.
For the first Op Agricola, the first tour of Kosovo.
Oh wow! Okay.
So that and that was, I missed out because my unit went to Bosnia, and I went to Kosovo. So like if I look back on it and I think about it for gold star stickers, I missed out on a medal. Right. You know, but like to be honest, to be on that tour was a real experience. You know, to go into, because we were based in Pristina, and to go into Pristina straight after the conflict, you know, when you've got this power vacuum, you know, where it's really lawless, you know, the only police on the streets really were the UNMIC, with the UN police, you know, and we weren't there in just a soldiering term. We were there to help the locals, you know, to do humanitarian work, to provide some form of policing and some reassurance to the locals. But, you know, they had like rolling blackouts, they had no real like running water, and you know, you're talking quite a big city, Pristina. You had people living in buildings that were either blown up or hadn't been completed, so they were like concrete shells. And you know, that winter will always live with me, because it was a very harsh winter, and I would always think to myself, I'm in a tented camp, just outside, which then became, it was known as VJ Barracks. I think they called it Slim Lines afterwards. I can't remember off the top of my head. But I always thought to myself, what must it be like in that city? You know, to be there off the back of, you know, pushing the Serbs out, you know, and you've not really got any structure there, and you're trying to survive, and it's bitter cold, you know. So it was my sort of first introduction, you know, to that sort of environment, you know, to being in effectively a war zone.
Yeah. So I never went to Kosovo, but only heard and saw pictures. What were the locals like? Were they quite accepting of the Brits being there?
Yeah, they were excellent.
Yeah.
You know, like funnily enough, when I went back on my next tour, I bumped into some of the interpreters from my very first tour, and we never had any problems. Like, people always sort of looked at us and thought, well, you know, you're a liberator. You assisted with pushing the Serbs out. You know, like a lot of our role ended up being, you know, going in and, you know, those Serbian people that got left behind, they're known as VPs, vulnerable persons.
Okay.
So like one of our tasks would be to go and visit these vulnerable persons. That could be like an older person who's unable to move back to Serbia, you know, might have lived in Kosovo, in Pristina their whole life, but they've got Serbian connections. But there's a lot of hatred off the back of that, you know. So there would be attacks against people. So it was, even though the local population were really good towards us and very engaging and, you know, kind. You know, there was that undercurrent there of hatred towards the Serbs, and, you know, because some bad stuff had happened, you know. And so as a young soldier, you know, you're trying to navigate your way through that environment, you know, seeing, you know, I can remember being out on patrol one time and come across a bunch of kids, and they were all amputees, and, you know, they'd been blown up by mines that the Serbs had put down, and like they wanted to have a picture taken with us. I think I've got that picture somewhere. I've kept it, and you know, it was the first time I'd met an amputee.
Really?
You know what I mean?
Okay.
And it was a little kid.
Yeah.
And they were just getting on with their lives, and, you know, it was just, yeah, it was just I always found that, like, every operational tour I gained something from.
Yeah.
You know, there was always something that just sort of built on my experience and my understanding of the world. My worldview was always increased. That's one of the things I love about the military, is it definitely opens your eyes.
And I guess those two tours, Northern Ireland and Kosovo, quite two contrasting experiences, right?
Yeah. Kosovo, well, it was a summer tour as well.
Oh, was it?
So that was quite refreshing, you know, but again, it was a completely different dynamic.
Yeah. And was that another 6-month tour? Yeah. Okay. And you then come back from there and I guess reconnect with your unit. Is that right? Because you said that part of your unit went and connected with them.
Yeah. So, like, our guys had gone to Bosnia.
Yeah.
And you know, we'd come back in, and then it was a case of our platoon reintegrating, because for the whole, you know how it works, you know, like, if you've got an operational tour, say that's the end result, you've got a massive training package beforehand that goes on for months. So we moved out of Barker Barracks and went to the Green Jackets camp, which at that point was not really a good thing to do, because, you know, it's like when you've got 2 infantry battalions, you know, sharing the same turf, you know, they're always fighting every weekend. And then all of a sudden, there's a whole platoon of us living in their camp. So now we made some great friends. And to be honest, I think it really developed the relationship between the Green Jackets and the Royal Regiment of Wales, because, you know, we were very professional. You know, I was in the same platoon that I'd been to Northern Ireland with. So we knew the standards that were expected of us.
Right.
We had great NCOs. You know, and, you know, like, my platoon, I can never speak highly enough of them. You know, we really did perform well, so they could never say a bad word about us.
Yeah, that's cool. That's good to learn as well, that can happen, you know, being attached to a unit, because as an engineer, you are attached or have people attached to you. But I guess 2 infantry units, I guess you never really know until you speak to somebody. So that's good. Thanks for sharing. And what does the next stages look like? Is it, again, just more leave, more training, and go on another deployment, or
pretty much?
Pretty much.
That's pretty much the standard. You'll always have, like, a big exercise in somewhere, and, you know, like, because there's always, like, the training plan for your unit, but then if you look at the bigger picture again, it's like, what is the brigade doing? And
true.
You know, so there's always something going on. But like, during that period after finishing up in Kosovo, I then transferred to Recce Platoon, or Reconnaissance Platoon.
Okay.
Because, like, well, not because I was following after my uncle, he was in Recce Platoon, but just because, like, my real passion wasn't really around the sort of fighting company stuff. I was always really interested in reconnaissance. So, and it was always seen as, you know, like almost a step up. You've got to be really good to get in there. So, like, when I moved across to Recce Platoon, you know, I went on my NCO's card. I'd done really well on that, and, you know, it was really good, because on the next deployment then, we become Brigade Surveillance Platoon. You know,
right.
Which was so I went back to Kosovo. So I did 2 tours of Kosovo.
Okay.
So my next experience then was, it was Kosovo, but through the lens of a camera, or through a scope in a covert OP somewhere. So, you know, we had to go away and do all of our training, you know, for that. You know.
Yeah. What does that look like? What do you get trained on when you do take that step up, as some say, to Recce Troop?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, it's different for a start. I mean, because we were armoured infantry, so whereas, like, the majority of guys would be on Warrior. So I trained on Warrior when we first got out to Germany, and I was a Warrior gunner.
Okay.
But then Recce Platoon is on Scimitar. CVRT, which is,
Right.
you know, tiny and a little bit old. Something I had to get used to quite a lot because the rest of my career I spent near enough in scimitar or CVRT. So you're getting used to a smaller vehicle and a different set of rules. You know, what is your role and responsibility within your unit is to find the enemy, pin them using indirect fire, or, you know, calling in, you know, attacks, teeing things up for the infantry, for the fighting companies to go in and attack. So, you know, a lot of time went in on like recognition, how to read the ground,
Okay.
you know, how to, you know, because you're still in an armoured vehicle, but you've still got to, we used to call it snurgling. So you've got to learn how to use the ground, stay in the dead ground. You know, you're a much smaller signature. Your weapon systems, you know, pretty much the same as a warrior, but you know, you're not as well armoured. You know, so you're not expected to last as long, so should we say? So you've got to use that ability to read the ground and to your advantage. So for me, that was that. And then with regards to Kosovo, you know, like I went to the Army School of Photography to learn about digital and wet photography, and spent like a lot of time on that. You're very much like today. It was quite enjoyable watching you setting all the stuff up,
right?
Because it just reminded me of like back then and how methodical you have to be, making sure everything's set up correctly. And, you know, we learned about covert surveillance and all the equipment that we use to go into that, you know, and I mean, I won't go into loads of detail on that. And then we went away to, I can't even remember. I think it was Salisbury. Yeah, we went to Salisbury to then do our like sort of brigade surveillance course.
Okay.
You know, which is like a culmination of bringing all those skills together to learn how to operate in that environment. And it was a very, very different tour, you know, for me, because like I said, you know, I'd gone from being that guy on patrol to now being a guy hidden in it could be the roof of a building, it could be in a grain silo, it could be in a bush, you know, looking at that guy on patrol through the camera, just checking, make sure he's okay, or watching a target, you know. So
how far away are you from those points of interest, let's say?
Oh, it all depends.
It does depend,
it's all down to the environment, to be honest. You know, we train for all environments,
right?
You know, so you sometimes you'd be working rural, so you might have to cut in and make a subsurface OP in a big like gorse bush or something, you know. Predominantly though, because again I was based in Pristina.
Okay.
A lot of it was urban.
Right.
So with sort of urban stuff, you know, it's right. How am I going to get a viewpoint on there without the people that are in the block of flats that I could possibly be in, knowing that I'm there anyway and giving away?
Yeah.
You know, so we'd have some overt OPs, so ones that you could see. You know, we would have to man to just as a deterrent, but then the majority of stuff was all sort of covert, and it was really cool because it just added another layer, you know, onto reconnaissance for me and what it was to operate in an urban or a rural environment and applying those skills.
Yeah, is there a story you can share from there that was maybe a great successful mission that allowed whatever team went in to do whatever job? You know,
yeah, I couldn't really go into details on that sort of stuff because I don't know what I'm allowed to talk about.
That's fair. That's fair.
I'm not.
I thought I'd ask.
Yeah. No. all I can say is that, you know, we had a real impact.
Good.
You know, and it like I said, it was such a learning for me.
Yeah.
You know, when you've one thing I will share, which you know, I don't know whether you want to edit it out, but it's about learning and working in small teams in a covert environment. And, you know, when you're on a camera for X amount of hours watching a target or a target building looking for individuals, and then you've got somebody next to you peeing in a bottle, or they put some cling film down and they're maybe doing something else, you know, you get to know your team very closely. So that was really interesting, how you got to be self-sustaining, and, you know, like you've got to be so reliant on each other, you know. So, like, you know, jokes aside about that sort of stuff, you know, you've got to have a real trust in your team, and, you know, that cohesion is really important, because once you're on your own, you've got a QRF, but when you're on your own, you're on your own. You know, anything that immediately happens, you've got to be on your game.
Absolutely,
you know?
Absolutely. And just for anybody listening that doesn't know, QRF is quick reaction force,
yeah.
just in case something goes down that shouldn't.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And I'm guessing you had to leave it the way you found it as well, to a certain extent, right? So people wouldn't know that you were there.
Yeah, and
that kind of stuff.
a lot of times, though, I mean, like if you had sort of like a rolling operation, because there's a shelf life on how long you can stay at, you know, like, I'm not going to say combat effectiveness, but how long you can stay on your game before you start to deteriorate because of, you know, it could be that you're on hard routine, so you're only eating cold food, you know,
right?
You know, and in those conditions, you know, it can get, you know, like I did a winter tour, and it can get very cold very quickly.
Yeah.
You know, so like with a lot of them, you would have a transfer. So you would have maybe the commander and the 2IC would come in, and 2 of your team would leave. So you, at some point, you would have in the team the commander and 2IC of each of those teams. And you would do a handover and takeover over a few days to, you know, give them an understanding of the equipment, the setup you've got, the target, so they understand that better. And, you know, you could be rolling through that position over a number of months, you know, and it's very, very difficult because obviously once you're in situ, and, you know, it's not a problem. But when you need resupply or you need to hand over to another team, how do you manage that without giving away, you know, your position as well? So there's a lot of work that went into that as well, a lot of planning. And once you're out of an OP, your job then is to go out and resupply or be the QRF for that team or be the guy on the radio ready to deploy the QRF if something happens. So you never really get any downtime unless you've just finished your like sort of stag, your watch in your OP. So that was the only sort of real rest time you get, like, because when you're back, because it was, I'm sure it was slim lines. It was quite weird because when I went back out there as brigade surveillance, we went into what was then a proper camp, and we were the first guys to go there on my previous tour, you know, so it was an old blown up Serbian army camp, and literally the engineers, top blokes that they are, had gone in and just literally just cleared an area. So we had this, they were like, oh, well, we don't need to worry too much, we'll put some fences up, but there's UXO all around you, unexploded ordnance, you know, so nobody's going to come and bother you. And then I came back and it was like a proper camp. And I was like, oh, I can remember when I was here when it was just a bit of a dump.
Yeah.
You know, pretty cool.
Talking to you about that, I can see why it's now classed as a step up, you know, bit of experience, a good unit, a good person to go into the Recce platoon. I said troop earlier because being engineers, that's what we call them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does make more sense now. So that's cool. Thanks for explaining that.
That's right.
And so next part, what does it look like? Where'd you go from there when you come back from Kosovo?
So I'm trying to track now. So I did the old classic. I think we went out to Canada.
Oh, you did Canada?
BATUS, and you know, that was a pretty interesting experience. You know,
I didn't do Canada.
No,
I'm probably one of the only people that didn't do it.
I loved Canada. I liked Canada when the wind was up and the mosquitoes, which were the size of birds, you know, would leave you alone. If the wind died down, you just get bit to death. So that wasn't fun, you know. So I can remember, like, on the previous tour in Kosovo, on my second tour, I had recently got married. So I can remember, like, Christmas Day, being on the roof of a building in probably about 2-3 foot of snow, laying there in the prone position on a sat phone, trying to call my new wife, you know, to, you know, say Merry Christmas. And she's like, oh, I can't stay on the phone too long, your mum's making dinner. And I'm just like freezing. Like, I thought, all right, that's a little taster of what it's like to be married and be in the military. And then I can remember being out on the prairie in Canada, and my wife was expecting our first child, and I wanted to know the gender. I'm out on the prairie trying to find a spot on a hill where I can get a bit of signal, you know, making sure the wind's up so I'm not getting and she said, oh yeah, and the gender is, and hung up.
Oh no.
I called back really quick, so I found out then. But yeah, like Canada was a good crack, but it was always about the operational tours, and everything we did was just a gap filler before deploying, because, you know, like, some soldiers never really liked, you know, the deployments, you know, the threat around it, and, you know, like, the workload. But I always really enjoyed it because it gives you the opportunity to really focus. I mean, if you go on tour and you're 70% fit, then there's a good chance you're going to come back off tour 110% fit, because you can focus on that. You know, you focus on your work, and your downtime you focus on whatever specific. You know, you see guys, they take guitars away and stuff like that, don't they? And they learn how to. Oh, the worst thing ever! Somebody learning to play the guitar for 6 months next to you. But you know, like it was all a case of, right, you know, when are we going on tour next? And then, you know, the next tour for us was then going out to Iraq, and I think that was in, I want to say 2003.
Was you first? Was it the first one?
No, when was it? I think it was Optelic 3.
Okay. Because 2003.
It might have been a bit later.
Was the actual first one, as far as I'm aware.
Maybe 2000.
You may be right. Maybe 2003 was the first one.
Yeah, I'm a bit iffy with the Iraq tours. So like we deployed out Recce Platoon, but like we'd sort of reverted from our Recce sort of role to just becoming a multiple, you know, just like in Northern Ireland. So you're just another team, you know, on the ground. And I remember like getting stuck into that tour, and it was a warm one. Okay. You know, and again, you've got to adjust to that environment as well, you know, so that took some adapting, you know, and I actually short toured on that. I'm trying to remember. I think I went back and went on to Junior Brecon, you know, which is like a section commander's battle course for the infantry. Okay. Yeah, so I'd gone back onto that.
Back to Brecon.
Yeah, back to Brecon. That hell of a change in weather. Yeah. You know, going from
sunny desert, hot climate.
Yeah. So like so I short toured on that, and then I'm trying to get my dates right. During that period post that, then I decided I wanted to transfer. So I'd sort of got a little bit of disillusioned. I picked up an injury on Brecon, and you know, it wasn't really, you know, I'd lost my mojo a little bit, and thought, oh, do you know what, I'll leave the army now. You know, so I went through a bit of a process, and you know, I think if I remember right, the Royal Regiment of Wales were about to deploy back out to Iraq again, and I was in my like sort of last bit before leaving, because you do like a year in lieu, don't you, before you leave. Okay.
Just question on that. So you did Junior Brecon. Is that for full screw?
Yeah, corporal. Yeah.
Full corporal. But you picked up an injury.
Yeah.
But you had completed it.
I completed the first part. I'd done the skillet arms, and I got injured just before tactics. We'd gone to do some sort of small exercise. They call it, I think it's called the tump, which is just at the back, and I'd torn something in the back of my knee. So I had to go back and then have surgery on that. So so I was a little bit deflated by that. But you know, but that's the nature of the beast. You know, you pick up injuries. And, you know, these things happen. But I just sort of fell by the wayside a little bit, and lost my way, lost my mojo, like I said, and then the guys had deployed, and I wasn't allowed to deploy because I was imminently leaving the army, and I got asked by the OC, you know, of rear party, said, "Oh, can you take these new lads to an army sort of event in Wales?" I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, no problem," you know, and went down there and bumped into the Queen's Dragoon Guards, the QDG, so their recruiting team was there, and I can't remember exactly where it was now, but I got to chatting to the guys, and I was like, "Oh, you know, how you doing and everything?" And they're like, yeah, really good. And I was like, "Well, you know, like, you guys are on tanks and stuff," and then, no, we're not on tanks anymore. So they were originally, you know, on Challenger 2, and they'd then changed over, and they were effectively, they were a formation reconnaissance regiment then, which is like a big recce platoon. So my ears pricked up then, and I thought to myself, "Oh, do you know what? I quite fancy that. Maybe I could have a fresh start and, you know, move across to the Queen's Dragoon Guards." And I went back, you know, come back from Wales, went back and spoke to the OC. I think we were based in Salisbury then, or I can't remember where we were, to be honest.
In the UK?
We were in Tidworth.
Okay, yeah.
So we were based in Tidworth. I went back and said, "Look, I'm quite interested in going across to the QDG." QDG were actually based out in Germany. They were in... no, it's gone. Can't remember.
Hona?
No,
No?
wasn't Hona.
Osnabrück.
Osnabrück. There we go.
Osnabrück.
Yeah. My memory fails me sometimes.
That's okay.
Yeah, so they were based out in Osnabrück. So like the OC said, yep, no problem. You want to go across, go and see what it's like, and you know, and to be honest, I never looked back.
Okay.
It was such a difference, because I mean, and you'll appreciate this. Going from a massive unit, which is an infantry battalion, to all of a sudden you're in a regiment which is so small, it looks smaller than Fire Support Company, which is what Recce Platoon was part of. When you see everyone on parade, so you've got quite a small group, but quite a tight-knit group as well, and very chilled out. You know, like when you're on the job, sharp as a tack, but you know, like when you're not having to be completely focused, it was quite relaxed. You know, I can remember meeting my squadron sergeant major for the first time, braced up like a plank of wood, and he's like, "Chill out, mate. Don't worry. Yeah, nice to meet you. Door's always open if you need any advice or anything," and stuff like that. And I thought, oh, this is a bit different, and I just thrived in that environment.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
I loved it.
So is that a normal thing, a common thing, or something that is there as a last resort? I don't know, with the transfer between infantry units.
Well, I don't know, to be honest. Like, I suppose in some respects it's better not to lose a soldier that's got a lot of experience and had a lot of money invested in him or her, than just to let them leave. And so because I asked to be put on a transfer and, you know, it was sort of pending, you know, like my regiment actually wanted me to come back once I signed back on the dotted line, but I'd already started the process to rebadge to QDG. And I just liked what they were about from the colonel down. They were just really approachable. And, you know, it just sort of felt like a bit of a fresh start.
Okay.
You know, it wasn't the infantry, but everything I'd learned in the infantry and all the experience I'd had was of value there, because they had a general lack of that sort of experience. You know, so there was they sort of became like a core group of ex-infantry guys or guys that had like a lot of infantry experience that then became like the training team for the regiment, you know, whenever we went on ranges, and, you know, was there to assist with that sort of stuff. You know, and, you know, fair play to the QDG. They took it and they ran with that, because like years down the line, you've got guys that are going on junior Brecon and senior Brecon. They saw the value in having that infantry experience there, and they understood that their soldiers, their homegrown soldiers needed to have that experience to be more effective. Not that they weren't effective, they were amazing, you know. And like I said, both of my cousins are in the Queen's Dragoon Guards now, and I gave them the same advice. I said, look, it's a very small unit, so if you're really, really good, you get noticed really, really quickly. Okay. If you're shit, you get noticed really, really quickly. You know, so you've got to be on your game. But it is a family regiment because of the size of it, and it's one of those things that, like I said, I just loved. Okay.
Did you have to go and do different training so that you, I don't know, knew what they were about?
Yeah. So I mean, there was a little bit. So we deployed out to back out to Iraq. So I'd gone out on my then second tour, but my first tour with the QDG, and I'd gone out and on exercise with them to Bavaria, and I got told by the colonel, right, this is sink or swim. We want to see what you're all about.
Really?
You're going to be a vehicle commander. Off you go.
Okay.
Now, obviously, it's just a big version of Recce Platoon.
And you kept your rank, sorry, when you went over.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So I was only a lance corporal at the time, so I'd gone across, and they said, right, you be a vehicle commander, and I was like, okay, brilliant. So I went out and I just did what I always do, and you know, I knew the vehicles and I knew Recce is Recce. So I went out and just smashed it out the park, and they were happy and I was happy. So we started the whole process for a transfer, which I was, you know, really quite pleased about, because I just loved the environment. And then we went out to Iraq, and they said, right, we need to transfer a couple of your skills, because, like I said, my phase 2 was infantry at the infantry training centre in Catterick. So my phase 2 qualifications weren't suitable to the Royal Army Corps.
Got it.
So I literally went and done an advanced driver's course while I was out there. So I basically got babysat by our LAD, you know, our REME guys. So I had to spend like a bit of time there just learning more about CVRT and all of that sort of stuff. So that's how we got that done.
Okay.
Obviously, weapon systems are exactly the same. I was a gunner on CVRT anyway, so I understood all of that, you know, and I knew the ins and outs of the vehicle itself. So during that tour, I had a small little section where I had to just get that out of the way, and then I actually rebadged. I got given my beret, you know, with my new cap badge while I was on deployment there, and you know, again, you know, it was interesting to be back out in Iraq. It was boiling hot again. But it was also, there's a very different vibe, and you know, if you've been around the military a lot, you get a different vibe from different units. And seeing the guys on tour, you know, was really, really interesting. And you know, the way they worked, like I said, you know, when you've got to be on it, sharp as attack, and then normally quite chilled out. Whereas, like in the infantry, it always sort of felt like you had to be, you know, on your game all the time, or somebody's going to be sort of breathing down your neck. But you know, different environments.
Yeah. That's cool. And so from that being your first tour with the QDG, is there something that stood out from you from that made you realise it was the right move?
Yeah, you know, I was in B Squadron, and I just, you know, when I reflect on it, I just think, you know, like 90% of the people I worked with, and that's, you know, I'm talking from OC down, I had respect for. I enjoyed working with. They were approachable. You know, it was a very joined up tour. You know, it was my first tour as a commander as well. So a lot of responsibility, but a lot of, like I said, you know, I'd done quite a bit beforehand. So I knew what the recipe was. So it was a great way for me to find out what type of commander I was, and you know, what type of what my man management skills were like, and you know. It also was a learning point for me as well about like how you can't go in with the same infantry mentality.
Okay.
So we would be very, very hard on mistakes, and standards would be of a certain level. And, you know, like anyone that ever like watches this, you know, and reflects on the type of soldier I was, would say, "Ooh, yeah, he wasn't a very chilled out guy," you know, because some things you just, it's hard to adapt, but I did mellow, and I did learn from you know, from other NCOs around me, but I also stuck to my guns of what I thought was right and what I thought was wrong, what I thought was acceptable and what wasn't.
Yeah.
You know, so I never really wavered from the standards I expected from my soldiers, but I always cared about them. So you know, I became very, very invested in, you know, my team, you know, how they were. You know, if there were any issues, but then they knew if I changed my tone of voice, if we were in a situation where I would say a certain thing in a certain way, then it's not really a question and answer moment. It's just, you know, get and do it.
Get the job done.
Yeah.
And where was you actually out there when you?
We were based in Almathana.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. The QDG had been out there before in Almathana, and we actually went through a process of handing Almathana back. Which was quite interesting. I've never been, you know, part of that experience. So I was actually there for the parade, you know, where we hand back over to the Iraqis, and you know, it was really quite interesting. And it was a lot of hours spent out in the desert, you know, just melting, absolutely melting. But again, you know, just a good experience. You know, like I said, it's all about. It doesn't matter what level you're at. You know, a good soldier is always learning, and you know, it was always a learning experience for me.
Yeah, and like you say, it's probably a real good experience to hand back part of Iraq, you know, a town or something back to the Iraqis. So
yeah, really interesting.
More information and more experience that you've gained. So yeah, like you say, every time you go away, you're learning something new. That's really cool to hear. And so then you come back, and where are you actually based when you come back? Is that in the UK? No, it's Germany, isn't it?
Yeah, we were in Osnabrück, but then we moved to Paderborn, so it was like returning to the scene of the crime. I know, yeah. So we went to, I think it was Dempsey Barracks.
Okay.
In Paderborn, so we had our own little camp.
Nice. So you had to help move the unit. Yeah, from Osnabrück to Paderborn.
We did that sort of transfer, and you know, I was a little bit excited, to be honest, because I had some great times in Paderborn. You know, you got back, the times had moved on, so some of the bars that you and I would have gone to had like closed or just weren't the same. Maybe we changed. I don't know. Yeah. You know, when you're a bit older, it's a bit different. But again, it was nice to get back to that environment. You know, to be in familiar surroundings. But again, the operational tempo, you know, that we had during that whole period, you know, was so intense. It's like, right, where are we going next?
Really,
You
yeah.
know,
So you moved, and then it was training ready to go
yeah, pretty
away.
much.
And where was that? Where was your next?
Afghanistan.
It was Afghan.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So like, you know, tours would follow thick and fast. I was quite excited about Afghanistan because again, it was a new environment. You know, I did like two tours. Yeah, I short toured on the first one, but 2 tours of Iraq. You know, I'd done 2 tours of Kosovo. Northern Ireland is a place I wouldn't want to go back to, just because of the deep impact it had on me as a young soldier. You know, like I said earlier. So a new environment. I'd heard quite a lot about it. You know, because you do when you're a little bit older. I was a full screw by then, or a corporal.
Got it.
Know, and you know, you got your ear to the ground, and you know, you see something coming up on the horizon, like a tour in Afghanistan, and you know it's going to be a bit different. You know, and maybe demand more from you in some respects. And it didn't let down, if I'm honest.
And that was your first tour as a full corporal, was it?
Yeah.
Okay. So where was you when you went out there?
So we went up to Musakala.
Okay.
So we're based out of Musakala, DC. Yeah, so I mean, like, it was my first full tour as a corporal. I promoted to full screw on during the tour in Iraq.
Right.
So, you know, from it was really interesting in the fact that, you know, like I said earlier on about like how we were part of the training team. Well, like I really had a big impact on how us as a squadron trained beforehand. So I learned, I went away and trained up on our weapon system. So we went on Mastiff, you know, which is like a big armored truck. Yeah. So I had to learn about grenade machine gun, 50 cal machine gun as well, which is amazing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But then train the troops up on that. And also with any big business, any unit or anything, you've got a natural turnover. So soldiers that I'd known, that had, you know, been out in Iraq with me, had left the military, and, you know, you've got young lads that come in, and you've got to quickly get them to a standard where they understand, you know, what's expected of them. I mean, it's okay for me because I'd had years of, you know, all these operational tours where I'd been able to take my time and get a real understanding of the environment and what's expected of you as a soldier. You know, from that first tour in 1998, it's sort of benchmarked for me. You got a young lad that's turning up and he's just finished training, and his first tour is Afghanistan. You know, that is a very steep learning curve.
Yeah.
So, you know, we put a huge amount of emphasis on, you know, like the training, the realism of the training, trying to make our soldiers understand the impact of their decisions, you know, and it was, and I was really proud to be part of that sort of journey for our squadron, you know, and seeing the growth in these young soldiers, and again seeing the growth in some of the young lance corporals that are recently promoted, and then seeing them on operations, you know, just nailing it, you know, day in, day out. Because what sort of environment would you ever be in where you've got a young 18-year-old laying down on his belt buckle, you know, with a paintbrush, brushing, you know, dust, this fine, like, foot powder type of dust away from an IED to get confirmation or a mine? You know what I mean? It's crazy. How do you even train for that?
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
And while you've got a commander in a vehicle with a 50 cal trained on the ground overlooking you, you know, so I just saw the most amazing growth during my time out there.
That's cool.
You know,
what year was that you went out there? So 98 was obviously your first tour, and then this is now
2008.
This is 2008.
2008.
So
yeah,
whole decade later.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so
Crazy.
built up a bit of experience. You know, I always sort of look back on that tour, you know, like with regret, not because of what had happened to me, but the fact that I hadn't been able to complete that tour.
Okay.
Because, you know, my guys, you know, we'd been out there and, you know, experienced a lot. And like I said, I talk about that personal growth and seeing that. And, you know, after I'd ended up going back to the UK, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about in a bit, like their tour didn't stop. They still had work to do, getting up first thing in the morning, getting out on patrol with that constant threat there, doing their job. So the soldiers that I met up with when I flew out to Cyprus with the other injured soldiers to sort of so we could all come home together, you know, and have that decompression together, you know, a lot of these soldiers had changed.
Okay.
like immeasurably.
Yeah,
you know, they were just different people, in a good way though.
Yeah.
You know, you could see that they were a bit older, you know, and they'd had some experiences.